Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Bulletin Broadcast. I am Ben. I feel like I have to introduce myself this week. Do I do that normally?
No, you don't. We usually shout at you that you're Ben.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm joined by Greg.
Hello, I'm Greg.
And with Dan as well.
Hello.
Yes, yet to be scared of.
Yeah, there's still time.
So this week has been an interesting one. We decided to discuss the top games of this generation.
In our opinion.
Yeah, in our opinion, this is by no means a proper list. There's no ranking or anything.
Oh, I tapped into the objective truth of what the best 3 games were. Were we not supposed to tap into the objective truth? Were we supposed to leave that alone?
I'll explain the angle I went with when it comes to me, because I feel like we all went with different angles.
Yep.
So basically, the way we're defining this generation, like we know the generation isn't over. There's still another year. But the generation is basically anything from early 2014 to December 2019 when we're recording this. And after much deliberation, mainly me and Greg being like, you have to, we included the Switch and the PC as well. So we're not just doing console.
That's just all the games that came out in this sort of space of time. And console generation is a bit of a funny one, but we're defining it as the lifespan of the Xbox One and PS4 to their new console generations coming out this coming year, 2020.
Yeah, so I'll start off this week. So I have 3 games on my list that I did not expect at all. I went with my definition of games of the generation being the games that had the most impact in that time frame.
So not necessarily
on you, or
yeah, on you.
Not just on me, but on the industry as a whole.
Okay.
So the first game I have on here is actually the VR edition of Superhot.
Wow. I don't think anyone expected this to be a game that would come up in this.
Yeah, so in my personal opinion, Superhot kind of defined what an action VR game should be, as far as I'm concerned.
Go on.
It's just, everything about it feels very fluid, right? I don't know if either of you have played it.
I've never played a VR game. It looks very 90s.
It's very much like, so the idea of Superhot is, as time stands still when time doesn't. Time stands still while you stand still. So as long as you're not moving, nothing moves.
Yeah, I've played the game. I just haven't played anything on VR.
while you're in it, it's hard to explain without having played in it. Like, everything feels very fluid, and there's no, I don't know how to explain. You feel very much immersed in the world.
There's sort of a strategic element to it, in that if you need to stop and think and plan what your next moves are, then you can literally stop and think and plan what your next moves are, because the whole world around you stops until you start taking an action or moving or shooting again.
Yeah,
the argument is it's not really an action game, it's a puzzle game.
See, that's the kind of the weird thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is more about, rather than, because everything's done in a set order, it's more about kind of, if it was like a shooting game, you would have, every time you replayed a checkpoint, it'd be something different, but it's more about kind of learning the patterns and how you can kind of overcome rather than...
But, Superhot was the only VR game I played that I kind of come out and I was like, this is what a VR game should be.
Okay.
Which is completely a personal thing, I understand, but I've played other VR games and they've not really done it for me.
Do you own a VR device, or are you doing this at shows and shit.
I've done it at shows, but I do own a VR device as well. I don't have the Move controllers, but I know Dan has a PSVR as well.
That may lead nicely into my third of my top three.
Segue.
Because I picked a VR title as well. I chose Moss for mine.
When it comes to fucking Dan, I just have to sit and Google, what the fuck is Moss?
Yeah, I feel like I need this open now.
Moss, the video game.
Okay, so while
thing
you
on the
look
wall.
up what it is, I'll explain my thinking of it. So, we kind of just defined it as top games of the generation. So I went with games that I did it from a more personal point of view, but I kind of looked at various lists. So I didn't just pick games off the top of my head. I looked at kind of other publications' ideas of what they thought were the top games of the generation, and I kind of culminated my list from them. My top 3 is actually a top 21. Because I think it's been
played every game, yes.
Well, that too. But I have managed to cut it down to 3, and I did choose Moss. So with Moss as a VR title, it's played with a controller, and you kind of, it's almost like you've got like a shoebox diorama in front of you, and you control an adorable mouse and have to maneuver the mouse around the kind of diorama in front of you, which will be some kind of puzzle. But I thought it was a really fantastic mix of VR with kind of storytelling. It kind of felt like the next step in VR for me. A lot of VR titles you play are kind of quite casual, or they're very much meant so that you can just kind of pick up and play, and there's been a couple of really ambitious ones that have been perhaps not implemented brilliantly, or there's a couple that have just made me feel very, very sick with kind of motion sickness, but this kind of felt like a really nice story, a lovely game that was just kind of made so much better by the addition of VR. So I picked it because it kind of feels like the way forward in my eyes.
That's interesting. We both kind of picked different games for the same reason.
Yeah, I think so. I have got Super Hot VR, but I haven't got round to it yet. I've played the original. I liked it. The other game that I like on VR that felt not necessarily like the next step, but felt like a very solid step in VR was a game called I Expect You to Die, which sounds very, very morbid, but basically it's a very cartoony kind of game where you play as a spy who's in the situation. So, for instance, the first level, you are on a plane in a car, and what it is the evil villain's car, and you're trying to get the car off of the plane, but the plane is slowly filling up with toxic gas, and you have to basically find the way to start the car. But there will be certain things like, as you put the key in the ignition, a bomb will appear, so then you have to follow instructions on how to do the bomb, and if you do that wrong, you die. And like, there's all these different, they are puzzles, but that was one that I was like, yeah, that was entertaining, that was cool, I like that. But Super Hot was definitely one of the standards stood out for me personally. Yeah, I had a game a bit like that. I Expect You to Die. Static. That was another great VR title.
That was where you were sat in the chair. You had the box thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, you had like your hands were in a box, and you held the controller obviously in your real hands, and you had to kind of use what was around the room, and using different buttons on the controller, because every box buttons did different things, and you had to kind of physically move your hands around to look at all the sides of the box to try and unlock it, which sounds very kind of straightforward, but it had like a story that ran with it that was very almost like the first Portal. So you were in kind of a lab environment, and there was kind of more to the story than you were told. Everything wasn't quite right. I quite like the fact that they took what could have been a very straightforward puzzle game where you just sat there and worked out puzzles, and kind of added that element of story through it. So that was another kind of good one for me. But like you say, Moss was just one that I thought, if this is the way VR keeps going, then it's only going to get better, rather than being what was kind of seen as by a lot of people as a flash in the pan, kind of like 3D. It kind of made me think, actually, the implications here are that this could be, the future of gaming, if you like.
I mean, it's got some pretty good scores. Just looking from I'm on the Wikipedia page, and other than 2 people who gave it a 7 out of 10, which is still an amazing score, everything else is 8 and 9. Even a Metacritic's 85%.
Mm. Yeah, my only gripe with it is it wasn't particularly long, and it left on a bit of a cliffhanger. Kind of Moss's story was to continue, and I hope it still does, but I haven't heard anything about them kind of making a sequel. So,
okay. Well,
VR stands for virtual reality.
Yeah.
That's my contribution. I've never played anything VR, so this is. I watched the trailer. It looks like a cool little mouse that does some cool things.
So, okay, in terms of your input, what was your one of your games, Greg?
So compared to your 2 lists so far, mine are pretty AAA sort of games, except for one of them. But I'm going to do it anyway. So I think we've all sort of interpreted this top 3 games of the generation thing differently. And I've gone with sort of my way of sort of splitting it down was the 3 games of this generation that have pulled me in, really absorbed me and just taken over me. I'm playing it whenever I can. When I'm not playing it, I'm thinking about it, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So I've gone with, and this one's the most obvious one, so don't switch off after you hear this, Fallout 4. So, as you two and the audience, if they've even slightly been paying attention, know, I like Fallout games a lot. Fallout 4 was not my favourite Fallout game, but in a lot of ways it improved on the previous ones. In a lot of ways it didn't. That's all controversial. I'm not getting into that. I don't have time. But the games, Fallout 4 is a really solid game, and it's in a lot of ways very playable. I don't really know how to put it better than that. And
playable is a word I'd use, yeah.
Well, I don't know. There are very few games that have completely absorbed my interest and made me want to be in the world more than that. And I always get I never get very far in the story, because the further you get, the more it undoes its own magic, because I think the game gets worse the further you get into the story. But while I've completed the game in all of my time with it about twice ever, compared to all the previous Fallout games, I completed them way more than that. I've played 32 days and 9 hours worth of Fallout 4, because I play everything but the main story. Does that make sense? I get up to a point in the main story where it's most interesting. Usually I don't do the Battle of Bunker Hill. I stop there and I just play everything else. And I adore the game, and I've done many new games. That's part of my mind problem, because I just love to start new games a lot. But I've played it a lot. I fucking love it. I love the game. It's good, and I will be so clear in saying that these aren't my top 3 games. Are not necessarily games I think are of high quality or the best quality or anything like that. They're games that have really pulled me in, and I know Dan is not interested in Fallout, and Ben struggled with Fallout 4.
Hey, I'm growing. I didn't boo this week.
Yeah, it's progress.
Yeah, I'm not growing. I'll boo Death Stranding if that comes up.
No. So, spoilers: there are no Kojima games on this list.
What?
No, me neither. Actually.
Yeah, I don't.
Thank fuck.
In my top 21, there isn't, actually.
With Kojima games, I feel like they're at a point where they're more of the same, and that isn't a bad thing, because that fills my fix, But I don't think he's done anything to define a generation, really. Not this generation, at least, anyway.
Do you know what what would have, which is funny, which came up on one of the lists I looked at, but PT was on there.
Oh, if PT...
That would have, I really think
sure.
that would have, if that would have came out, but obviously it wasn't meant to be. We got Death Stranding instead.
Even PT is like an honourable mention for me, really.
Yeah, that's what this guy said. Basically said it was such a solid experience, even though it was short and never made it to a game. It's something that he still thinks about, which is why it made his list.
Okay, shall I jump in with one of my second ones?
Before you do, a quick observation from Greg. PT also features babies. Maybe Kojima had babies on the mind at the time of Death Stranding and PT.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, maybe.
That's a Greg observation. There you go.
Is it one of these like so many per episode things? Are we going to get a couple?
Yeah, for sure. And they're always going to be the best kind of observations. I'll never get it wrong. We'll never end up with Greg on my face.
Oh,
Greg.
Wow. That was actually quite good.
I hate what I said. Good.
Okay.
Move on.
Game 2. Another game I never expected to be on my list. Undertale.
Ooh.
Either of you familiar with Undertale?
Yeah.
I know of it. I haven't played it, but I know of it.
Essentially, it is a game that you play as a human child who falls into the world of monsters. You basically fall into this world, and you it's one of those games where the story is told in part by characters, but also in part by things in the environment. So there's a corridor where you walk down and you learn about this massive war between the humans and the monsters, and it didn't end very well for the monsters, because basically humans, it all works off of like souls. So like one human soul is as powerful as 100 monster souls. So the idea was that 10 humans could defeat 1,000 monsters, so the monsters were never going to win. And as a human in the monster world, you're at risk, basically, because there are monsters there who will want to harvest your soul to make them more powerful, because then they'll become as strong as 100 monsters or whatever. And basically the idea is they can rise up against the humans if they have one human soul.
God, I've played most of the game, and I did not pick up on most of that. I just thought it was the funniest game I've ever played.
So, yeah, this is kind of why it's on the list. It is amazingly funny. The sense of humour throughout the whole thing is brilliant. But the thing that got me the most was the ability to be completely pacifist or completely go mass genocide or somewhere in the middle. It was entirely up to you what you wanted to do. So for anybody who hasn't played the game, when you encounter a creature that wishes to attack you, each of them will have different things you can do. So you can standard RPG things, you can attack, you can use an item, but there's also like a talk feature, or some of them that are like dog monsters, you can pet them instead.
Yeah, some things like giant spaghetti monsters turn up, and like you can flirt with them, and they're like, "Oh, that's a nice compliment."
And the idea is that you can basically talk your way out of a fight instead of having to kill it. And then if you talk your way out of a fight, that affects the way the story goes. And those who have played it know about the whole Sans time loop thing that I'm not going to get into. But there's a very clever fourth wall break, which I appreciate. I do love a good fourth wall break. And it's It's the fact that it was all made by one guy. That's the other thing that gets me. Like this amazing. I'm pretty sure like it won a fucking award.
Yeah, it did. It was huge when it came out. In certain circles, I specify.
But it's one of those games that you just have to play. Like it's in terms of the games that have come out within this time span, it's a must-play game. Everything that it does, the story, the comedy, the combat system, the gameplay, the way you can do it, the fact that you can play it once and befriend everything and then play it again and murder everything, and it's genuinely replayable. You do get different situations out of it.
I would recommend it, Dan. Yeah, I think you'll appreciate it, even if on the comedy level, because it's so fucking funny. Yeah, I honestly have never laughed anywhere close to that much at a video game before. It was really funny.
It was just like nothing that's come out. I don't think. Not that like. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
Not that it was like amazingly good. It was amazingly good, but I just mean it's hard to compare it to anything.
Yeah, it's a unique game.
But it's on Switch, Dan. You should grab it.
Yeah, well, I've just been looking. It's like £12 on PlayStation Store. So I've been meaning to pick it up for ages, but it's just one of those that I just forget it's there.
No, I get that. I forgot about it for some time. I got it on sale on Black Friday about 2 years ago on PlayStation. Yeah,
there's a couple of games that are kind of non-AAA games that I have to play. I've been told by many people. Undertale is one. Into the Woods is another. Or Night in the Woods, is another. But I just forget about them, and unless they pop up on the home screen, they just kind of leave my brain.
It's weird because I'm looking through the accolades, and it's like it won many awards from media and stuff, but it didn't win any actual awards in terms of actual awards. Like Jim Sterling and Zero Punctuation gave it Game of the Year. It got Game of the Month from Rock Paper Shotgun. It won Best Game Ever for Game FAQs and was awarded Best PC Game from Destructoid and IGN. And then at the big awards, it won awards to do with audience, like the Audience Award. Polygon named it among the decade's best game. But I thought
fan favourite type thing.
Yeah, I thought it had won. I mean, there's still actual awards, but you know what I mean? Like, to be like, Golden Joysticks or something like that.
Yeah, it's a cult hit.
Yeah.
The people that love it, love it.
It's definitely, Toby Fox, one man made, except for Temi Chan, who was the artist. But yeah, Toby Fox did everything else. He designed it, programmed it, wrote it, composed the music, everything. One man.
Yeah, I'm sure I've heard somewhere that this was basically like his life for like 3 years. Like he just poured everything he had into this. And of course it's worked out well for him.
Yeah. So
good on him.
This list did surprise me as I go through it, because I very nearly put Spider-Man Insomniac, like the Insomniac Spider-Man game on here, because I very much was like, I really, really loved that game. But then, because of the spin I took on it of, how did they define the generation as a whole, I love Spider-Man, and if somebody said to me what was one of the best games that you played of the generation, Spider-Man would be on that list. But because of the spin I took, I don't think that it did enough to change the generation. So it didn't make the list, unfortunately.
Oh, rough times. Go on then, Dan, what's your second one?
Okay, well, my second one was actually going to be Spider-Man. But I bumped it just because as much as I enjoyed it kind of, I tried to think of what's had, similar to your kind of point of view, Greg, of what sort of had an impact on me in terms of the way it was done. And Spider-Man, as much as I enjoyed it, it wasn't one that I was kind of... It was a blast to play, but it wasn't one I thought about when I wasn't playing it, that I was desperate to get on, you know? So the second one in my list was God of War.
I expected somebody to talk about God of War.
Yeah. Firstly, I think just because it was just kind of gloriously spectacular. It was such a kind of epic experience. But also because I very, very much like the organic way it told its story. I tried not to put any remasters or anything on my list, which is why like Last of Us remaster didn't make it. But Last of Us, I thought, was amazing the way that it told its story just between kind of the two main characters chatting. The kind of banter, the back and forth between them. And God of War did the same. It was very much the relationship of the father and the son, and you kind of just listening to them talk to each other, and kind of the way the story built up around it, I just thought was phenomenal. And the combat was great. It was great fun to play, and that was one that I would be at work thinking, I can't wait to see what I get to do next.
Oh, okay, so it impacted you quite a lot.
It did, yeah. I mean, because God of War has been around for quite a long time, but you always kind of knew that it was the Greek mythology, and you kind of had a rough idea where it was going to go. But this one was, because it kind of took a more Norse turn, and I didn't know what to expect from the story. You know, when you got to kind of opening up the new worlds and things, it was, where am I going to go next? Who am I going to meet next? What's going to happen? I don't know where this is going. It kind of kept me gripped right up until the end, which is kind of why it took Spider-Man's spot.
That's fair. It makes sense.
Either of you play it?
I have not, unfortunately.
I've not played it either.
Shocking.
Yeah. I have heard it discussed and thought that does sound nice. It's one of those ones that I'll pick up when it's low price at some point in the far-flung future. Part of my problem is I didn't engage very much with this generation and spent a lot of this generation as my opportunity to catch up with the last generation and pick up everything now that it was so cheap.
So we should really have this chat again in maybe 2025.
Yeah.
And just revisit the same thing and then see what Greg liked from this generation.
That's true. My list would probably look quite different, actually. It's all that stuff. I was like, I'll give that a go when it's cheap. And a surprising number of things will fall into that category with me.
So what's your second game then?
Me? Is that me?
Yes, you.
Wow, how exciting! We're already on to me again. Oh.
Full circle.
So, this is when it got difficult, because I really struggled with my second and third, just because there was so many things that couldn't quite define, I couldn't quite put it in, which is why I had to take the really hard line of what completely pulled me in, and I just couldn't drop. So here it goes, Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Really?
That game was like, I adored it for about 3 months and didn't stop adoring it, but it did get slow, and I stopped playing it thinking I'd come back to it, and I'm still meaning to come back to it.
That has genuinely shocked me.
I thought it might, yeah.
Yeah, same. That's like saying it, you know, to me, this is going to sound really judgmental and awful, but I don't care. That's like picking like a Call of Duty or a FIFA, because it's just a yearly update game in my eyes.
Odyssey was different, it wasn't, was it? Was Odyssey the one that had the 2 or 3 year gap?
Origins took the year gap.
Oh, that was Origins.
Odyssey is iterative on Origins.
So it wasn't the groundbreakingly different one. It was the one that copied the groundbreakingly different one. It was the first yearly update of the groundbreakingly different one.
But the thing is, so I played Origins, and I really liked how different it was. But that game, and I got similar with Odyssey. Actually, I got to a point where it just stopped being engaging. I got really annoyed with Origins because I basically got these 2 legendary weapons which were extremely powerful. I never needed to get anything else. I just needed to keep upgrading them, and it completely killed my roleplay because I had a staff that was always on fire. Whatever I did, it was this mighty staff, and it was just like this blazing thing that I'm just like, there's never any explanation. He never applies any oil. That would have made it for me. But no, it's just this magic staff that's always on fire. That was like, what the fuck is this? Why is this happening? So there was that, and there was the other one, which was this really cool scimitar thing, which constantly applied a poisoning effect, but he never applied any poison. You see what? It's a nightmare, right? I couldn't actually, because I like to roleplay in these games. I like to get into the head of the character. And here I was seeing me be just this magic idiot running around the Egyptian desert, just whacking people with my fire staff, and then being like, it is a sneaky assassin. I'm like, no, I wasn't. Did you not see me kill him with a fire staff? And I'm just sitting there thinking, this is not my game anymore. But Odyssey, it kept me hooked for a really long time. It had a lot more features. It had a lot more shit to keep up with. It had way more... So Origins, you were just following the main quest line, basically. And there was other quests, but it was basically that. Whereas Origins is like, it's got a main quest line. It's got this war thing where you're dealing with the war between the Athenians and the Spartans, and you can swap sides, and you can fight battles for different teams and switch forts over for different people. You can pursue the Templars, which are not yet the Templars. They're like the Order or whatever they're fucking called. You can pursue members of that, and there's like this whole assassination tree where you're looking into things, and you can investigate like coal, like mines and things like that, and looking for all these different people. There's a lot more to it. Oh, and there's the ship stuff, and the ship stuff's really good fun. I mean, Odyssey was just way more fun to explore as well, and didn't have so much the problem that Origins had, where while Origins was technically as open as fuck, your level was just point and laugh. Like, you were either way under leveled for something, and there was just no point you ever going there, so you just followed what you were told to do, or things from behind you were now so under-leveled that you wouldn't want to bother going back to look at that quest that you were interested in before, but you stuck with the main mission. Whereas fucking Odyssey, the Greek one, does a lot more of that. So Odyssey as an overall package, it improved in every single way on Origins. I really liked it. I would recommend it on the cheap if you like Assassin's Creed games. It's good fun. Yeah.
I was just looking it up, and I didn't realise that Assassin's Creed was as big of a series as it is. Odyssey is the 11th major instalment and the 21st instalment overall.
Yeah, they rinsed it.
Jesus Christ. Oh, Greg, there's a Google Stadia version launching.
That's their primary marketing with Google Stadia. It was the fact that we're going to have Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a game that is a year old, and everyone who is going to play it has played it already.
I mean, it was well received.
It was. People did like it. I think part of the issue is that there was a pay-to-win microtransaction element, which I think their subtle way of presenting it in the game was, and it's the bit I've gotten up to, I think, is they suddenly make everything... There's a big leap in difficulty, and either you need to do a lot of side quests to level up, or you're encouraged, I guess, to pay for more powerful things so that you can keep up. And that's where my interest is like petered off. That and the fact that I actually think the game has run too long. It's such a huge game, and I don't know how many hours I've put into it, but I've put in, way longer than any normal Assassin's Creed game. And and really enjoyed it, but it's just getting to the point where it's just A to B to A to B again and again and again. And I want to have a conclusion. I no longer care about, like, oh, I guess this is the kingdom of the Spartans. Is this the build up to the last mission? Is this it? No, you're going to go into these mountain ranges that, you know, everything's really high leveled here, and you don't really care. And
are you still talking about this as one of the games of the generation?
Yeah. That's what
shut
I was
the fuck up, Ben. So, like I said at the beginning, these are all games that have flaws, and they're not necessarily the best games of the generation. These are the games that have absorbed me and made I've had the best time with. I've had like really great fun with.
Okay, no, I'm not. I was just curious how. I was trying to work out if we'd switch subjects of the podcast midway.
Gonna slap you.
My favourite game of the generation is actually shit.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Oh, all right. Before we go into full blown tiff, let me do my final game. Are you ready? Okay.
I'm so ready, Ben.
The final one is another one I did not expect to have on here. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Another one to Google.
Oh, so basically, it all revolves around a character who is trying to rescue the soul of her dead lover from the goddess Hela, who is, I believe, the Norse god of the underworld.
I don't fucking know.
But basically,
it's the MCU, so I guess so.
Yeah, it was basically like hack and slash, puzzle solving, psychological horror. It was a really, really good game, and the main character in it, she thinks she has this curse that basically causes her to hear things and stuff, but it's actually psychosis.
It's very cleverly disguised. It's actually like about mental health, really, isn't it?
Yeah. It was a really different game, but the reason that it made the list for me is because, to my knowledge, it is the first independent AAA game.
Ooh.
Well, they called it a AA game, didn't they?
Something like that. You coined a different term, but yeah.
Because it was kind of, it looks AAA, it feels AAA, but they realised that it wasn't quite kind of the scale, so it was like 25 quid new.
Yeah.
Because I reviewed it actually, and I must admit it had some of the best combat that I've ever experienced.
The reason I put it on the list is because maybe this is a topic we can cover later on, I don't know, but I feel that indie, AAA, AA, whatever you want to call them, that will become, within the next couple of years, everybody's go-to style of game, if that makes sense. I feel like, maybe it's just me, but AAA games are kind of, because of the microtransactions and such, I feel like people are becoming a little bit fed up with it all. And there's something about indie games, they have that charm to them.
They feel genuine.
Yeah,
they feel like they're there to tell a story, and it feels more like art than a product.
Exactly. You play it, and this isn't to take away from anybody who is a AAA developer or works for a AAA studio, but you can't help but know that it was essentially made by a game publishing conglomerate, or whatever you want to call them. You know, you play it, and even if you enjoy it, you're like, still, it's got a very mass-produced feel to it.
It does feel like sometimes they're made to make money rather than to tell a story.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's like that double-edged sword, isn't it? Because obviously, you know, they need to make money because of the scale of the company. Obviously, you know, like, imagine if Ubisoft didn't make a game for 2 years. Like,
well, they certainly can't.
well,
2 minutes.
but yeah, I feel like indie's definitely taken off over the last couple of years, mainly through things such as like Steam, and definitely YouTube has helped. A lot of YouTubers pushing indie games that they like and basically using their reach, playing a game they enjoy, and then however many millions of people see that and are like, oh yeah, that's a good game, and then they tell their friends, and then their friends tell their friends, and indie's definitely come a long way, even just over the space of this generation. But
Do you know what I think part of that is as well? Talking from an older generation, so a lot of my friends who we would all, spend hundreds of hours playing Final Fantasy when we were younger, that kind of thing. A lot of my friends are kind of at the age where they've got kids, they are married, they are working full time, they're doing quite strenuous jobs. They like to be able to pick up a game and get a full experience and a full story in 10 hours.
yeah,
Something that they can play a couple of nights in a week and feel like they've got it finished. And, I've got friends that really like the look of things like Red Dead, but will openly say, I do not have 80 hours to finish a game. It will not happen. I will play it, I will think it's beautiful, I will do a few missions, and then I'll never get to go back to it. And a lot of my friends kind of lean towards indie games now because they're just so much more accessible and they fit their lifestyle much better.
yeah, I definitely feel like I feel like indie's going to be not necessarily the way forward, because you're never going to stop the AAA machine, But I feel like
You wouldn't want to.
no. See, this is the thing, because I'm not saying all AAA games are bad, but I definitely feel like as people become a lot more aware of the how do I phrase this? The situations that AAA developers are put in, the actual amount of man hours and work that go into a AAA game, 100-hour crunch weeks, months before release and stuff like that, that people may eventually start sort of turning to indie more. And like the Switch, the Switch is like an indie marketplace basically. There's so many indie games on the Switch.
That's part of the discussion as well, that you're right in that people are more aware of crunch and people are more concerned about workers' rights in AAA studios, but the conversation, I think, is yet to pivot to the flaws in the indie scene, in the way that people work and they process things. We were just talking about Toby Fox, who made Undertale all on his own and basically lived this life of nothing but making Undertale with almost no income, because he was spending all his time making a game completely independently. There was two people who made Super Meat Boy, and the reason why they didn't make Super Meat Boy 2 is one of them said that he refused to go near the code of Super Meat Boy 1 ever again, because he's got this sort of PTSD towards it. Like, it was too much. He can't even think about it anymore. There's part of the problem with game development as a whole industry is it's expensive, and it's, as you say, workforce intensive, time intensive, and loads of people love gaming, so they throw everything they've got at it because they want to make a livelihood in it. But it means that people are having diminishing effect, and you can make an amazing game and it doesn't get played and it doesn't get bought, and it can be the end of livelihoods and all sorts. The industry's in a bit of trouble, and has been for a while, and if it's going to be damaged by anything, it's going to be damaged by the glut problem, where there's just too much of it and too many people are trying to get a slice of the pie, and there's not enough money to go around in the industry for everyone to have a slice of the pie.
Yeah, maybe we should reach out to some people and see if we can get some people on and talk about it properly.
That's a good idea.
Okay,
Let's do it.
Back to the topic. Whose turn is it now? I do believe it's Greg or Dan.
Could be. Dan, have you said your third one?
Yes, I have a third one. So after a nice, wonderful talk about the evil bitch that is the games industry and AAA in general, I have a AAA title as my first. I couldn't not choose Breath of the Wild, I'm afraid.
I figured it was coming. I knew there was a Zelda game on here.
Yeah, but
it's not it's not your generic Zelda game, is it? That's the thing.
It's not. I didn't choose it because it was a Zelda game. I just chose it because when I did think about the generation, and bearing in mind this was quite early on because it was a Wii U title originally, so it was kind of very early in the generation, if you like, and it's just a phenomenal experience. When I first thought back to what game has really blown my mind in the last however many years, that was it. I couldn't think of anything to top it. So yeah, I know it's a bit anticlimactic and kind of obvious choice, but there it is.
No, I mean, it has to be on there, right? One of us had to talk about it. It's that kind of game.
Every list I looked at, which was probably about 7 or 8, some were top 10, some were top 100, it was top 3, I think, on all of them. So it's not an opinion that I hold alone.
No. Definitely not. Greg, do you have an input on Breath of the Wild?
Never played it. The only Zelda game I've ever played was Minish Cap on Game Boy Advance like 15 years ago. Seemed fine. I don't have strong opinions on it. I don't really care for puzzles, so whenever a puzzle mechanic happens at me, I'm just like, do I care?
Dan is just looking at his like Zelda sleeve and slowly weeping.
No. Yeah, I tell you what. Do you know what I think set Breath of the Wild above the rest was? It wasn't just the fact that. I mean, because if you look at the Zelda franchise as a whole, I mean, they're all 8, 9, 10 out of 10 games. That they do well. They put a lot of thought into them. There aren't many duds in the franchise. But I think what really set Breath of the Wild apart was just the attention to detail, just the little things that weren't even kind of billed as selling points, but were just things you could do. I mean, you could look at a situation and decide that you're going to set the field on fire in order to funnel enemies into a place that you want them, and then use the heat from the fire as a kind of an updraft to your glider to fly over the situation. And do you know what I mean? There was just so many kind of little things that you could do that it was just about kind of exploring it. It wasn't even like, oh, this is an amazing mechanic that we've created, let's do a tutorial on it and ram it down your throat. It was just, here's Link, here's the basics, go for it. And a lot of it's about discovering it yourself and working out what you could do in the environment. And I think that was why I enjoyed it so much.
Do you think that Breath of the Wild set the standard for future Zelda games? Like, I know they're doing a sequel, but do you imagine that Zelda games from now on, if it's not an open world, people are going to be like, oh, well, Breath of the Wild.
I don't know. I mean, the last Zelda release was Link's Awakening, and the way they did that, I mean, it was a remake, but the way they did it was they made everything kind of toy-like.
Yeah.
You felt like you were almost playing as a toy in kind of a toy environment. I think if they're going to do kind of a big-scale Zelda game from now on, so when you think kind of like Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, that kind of Zelda, they're going to have to go down the open world route, or they're going to have to insert like a gimmick.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be a completely different style, like when they did Wind Waker and decided to cel shade it, which nobody was expecting. Everyone was expecting kind of a more realistic Ocarina of Time. That's the way they thought they were going to progress. And they were like, no, we're going to do this now because we want to. So I think they're either going to have to completely reverse it and do something that is absolutely nothing like it, or, like you say, the precedent is set now. They've made... I mean, like I said to you before, I'm a bit worried about the sequel because I don't get how they can top it. And I don't know that it's going to have that same wonder of exploration and kind of learning things for yourself if you've already done it all.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, like, other than Jim Sterling, who gave it a 7 out of 10, I can't think of anybody who actually didn't give this game 10 out of 10.
Yeah, that's...
except for Video Gamer gave it a 9, Nintendo World Report gave it a 9.5, EGM gave it a 9.5, but you look anywhere else, Destructoid, Eurogamer, Game Informer, GameSpot, Games Radar, Giant Bomb, IGM, Polygon,
Games Bulletin,
all 10 out of 10.
Even more important than what reviewers are giving it is the fact that it's my understanding that it was good at selling Switches when people were moving onto the Switch. I know it came out on the Wii U and the Switch, but my understanding is it was a launch. Yeah, so I think it would have played a big part in the explosion that was Nintendo Switch at launch, because it did very well at launch, and consoles don't normally do that well at launch because there's not usually something to write home about on the launch title.
So yeah,
everyone loved it.
We were just looking up, and so it released on March 3rd, 2017, and where was it saying about sales? Okay, so sales for the Switch reached 14.5 million by September 2019. Wow,
that's good.
Does it say
they're not even halfway through their generation?
Does it say how well it's sold? Oh, there you go. Sales, initial launch. In the sales during the initial period were strong in the United States, UK, France, and Germany. Media Create estimated that more than 500,000 Switches were sold in Japan in the first month. Fair play. Wow. Yeah, it's definitely. It's like the game of that console, isn't it? Really, like.
Yeah. I think so. I think what's remarkable about it is technically it could be classed as just a handheld title because you don't have to, be in the Switch. I played it on the TV, but you don't expect a defining game of a generation really to be on a handheld console. I mean, how many other things made your list that were like 3DS or PS Vita? You don't.
Yeah, no.
Do you know what I mean? It was the fact, I think, as well, that you could take it anywhere. It was just incredibly well done. Like Greg said, to be a launch title, to kind of help put the Switch on the map. I think it really did that.
Yeah, I mean, the only time I've seen Breath of the Wild be played on like YouTube or whatever, but to see it in person, the only time I've ever seen it was when one of my managers at work brought his Switch in, and his stepbrother or brother-in-law had lent him Zelda, and I had physically held it in my hands and played it, and I was like, this looks just as good on my TV on the YouTube video I was watching that it did like actually in my hands. I was like, it's the exact same fucking product. It was weird, really, really surreal. But Greg, I believe you have one last one for us.
So my mind has been changing on this last one throughout this recording. And I'm really struggling with it because I would give this answer in one of three ways. And I think I'm gonna go with, he says, not knowing how he's gonna finish that sentence. Massive Chalice.
Okay, alright, go on, you talk, I'm getting Google up.
Yeah, none of you know what this is. So, I adore the XCOM games, and XCOM 2 was one of the ones that I was debating this with. And Massive Chalice is in the same style as the XCOM games. it's a sort of I don't know all the special words for it. So it's like a tile, like take your turns, sort of tactical strategy from above,
like an
sort
RTS
of
sort of thing.
Turn-based strategy.
Yeah, turn-based. That's what I wanted to say. It's a turn-based strategy,
It
where
looks very nice.
basically, it's artistically, it's really interesting. You basically build a party of people, and you take them into combat, and there's permanent death. So you have to weigh this up. And you're managing, when you're not in missions, you're managing a sort of meta mechanic from above, where you basically have all these royal families which have these special powers, and you're basically trying to, the game runs for 300 years. So the people who are your best people at the very beginning, while you want them in combat, you also kind of want them making children, so that you can have more people of their level of quality. And there's all these different layers to it, and I don't know if either of you have ever played XCOM games. That would save a lot of time in me explaining it. But
I have played XCOM.
I've dabbled, yeah.
More time, that kind of. I've played a few. They are, as Ben will know, not my favourites, because he made me review more time, and I hated him for quite a while. But I appreciate why people like them. That sounds really conceited. Like I get
see the appeal,
but it doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah. I'm the same. I dabbled in a bit of XCOM 2 when I did a collaboration with somebody, and I can see the appeal. And like I spoke last session about Reese being a massive fan of them, and him getting me to play Planetary Annihilation. And I did actually enjoy that, but XCOM is on a different level, and I just can't. I feel like I enjoyed the game more because I was playing with Reese rather than actually enjoying the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. They're not for everyone. I love the XCOM games, and I really love Massive Chalice. It came free with gold like 4 years ago, like a really long time ago. I was at university, I think in my second year, when it came into my life out of nowhere. I was looking for an excuse not to work, and all of a sudden this game, which was shockingly good, just came into my life, and I adored it. And I've replayed it since as well, and not played it in a while. Maybe I'll give it another go. But it's definitely got this place in my life.
It was made by Double Fine. Okay.
I don't know who they are.
Double Fine did what I consider to be one of my favourite games of all time, which was Brutal Legend.
Ah, yes, people love that Brutal Legend. Yeah.
Okay,
I liked Brutal Legend. They lied a lot, but I liked Brutal Legend.
I liked it. The thing was, being a teenage metalhead, somebody was like, here's a game, and it's kind of like a strategy game, I guess, in the way that the battle system works. But it was like, here's a game, and Jack Black plays the main character. I was like, sweet, cool. And then there's like, and Lemmy's in it, and Ozzy's in it, and he's there, and this, and I was just like, oh my god, it's metal overload. But yeah, I loved it.
Right, have we got any honourable mentions before we wrap this one up?
I have one. I mean,
I have 18.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, there are so many
right,
games.
Dan, do your best to combine all of your 18 into one singular word. Ben, you tell us your honourable mention.
So, I mean, like I said, there were so many games I could talk about. Dark Souls 3 was a big game for me. I very much loved that because I didn't think I would ever love Dark Souls 3, and Reese got me onto it, and we did a series on the channel, and it was very much fun / annoying / amazing. But if I had to pick one, Alien Isolation is my. So I have a big thing about horror games, right? I like horror games, but I don't like playing horror games because I find that all of the horror games I play use very cheap jump scare tactics, and while it gets me momentarily, it doesn't hit the spot I want it to hit. if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons I loved PT, which I guess I could tie with Alien Isolation. But the thing about Alien Isolation is, you're in this massive spaceship, and it's all the movements of the alien, of the xenomorph, they're all randomly generated. You don't know where it's going to be. You can't learn the pattern. It's not like, oh yeah, it'll be down this corridor, because you die and then you respawn and it's in a different place. And traipsing through this massive empty ship, which is strangely eerie enough on its own, but then to have a scanner showing you a dot moving and basically your potential death coming slowly closer towards you, there was something about it that just stood out to me as a horror game, because it was genuinely uncomfortable. And I guess you could put Resi 7 on the list. I haven't put Resi 7 on the list just because I haven't played Resi 7.
I was going to interject, actually. I loved Alien Isolation. My favourite thing about it was how well they matched the technology on the ship to the original films.
Yeah.
So everything felt very 70s, 80s. I thought it was amazing. If I had to pick, Resident Evil 7 was more... That made my list because of the randomly generated... I've never been so scared playing a game in my entire life. And I tried to play Resident Evil 7 again. I was going to go through it again in VR, and I couldn't do it. I physically couldn't do it because it's the same as Alien, but you don't have a scanner, so you have to poke your head out of a small opening, and there may or may not be a giant thing that can one kill you somewhere. And it was just I was constantly on edge playing it, and if any game can elicit that emotion in someone, I think it deserves a mention.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, like I said, I would tie Resi 7 with Alien, but I picked Alien because I've watched... I'm one of these people, I watch playthroughs on YouTube, YouTube is my main content, but I wouldn't put Resi 7 on there just because I haven't played it. And it feels weird, I can't talk about it.
The fear is much more real if you're the one in control of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because then it's your decision as to which way you turn and which way you go. And a lot of the time I would end up screaming out loud because I'd turn a corner thinking I was absolutely sure that I'd heard whoever it was at the other side of the mansion and they were right in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, PT's close, but with PT there was a level of pattern to an extent. Like, it got to the point where it was creepy, but I spent 2 hours trying to complete that game. And the first 20 or 30 minutes, I was on fucking edge, like I thought I was going to shit my pants. And then... Well, I mean, like, when you're walking along and all of a sudden the radio's like, look behind you, and you're like, hurt? No, I'm not falling for that shit, thank you very much. And then Lisa grabs you and turns you around, and you're like, oh, cool. Amazing. But after a while, I picked up on the cues, and I could tell when things were going to happen, because obviously that was one of the problems with PT, is that, you weren't meant to be in the world for that long, I don't think.
Well, to be fair, it was a demo.
Exactly. It's a demo. You're supposed to be like sort of 20 minutes, but then because nobody could complete the demo, everyone was playing it for like 3 hours trying to do it. So that kind of came around to bite it in the arse. But yeah, Alien Isolation. If you haven't played it, play it. Super cheap on the PlayStation. Available on the Switch as well. Yeah, do it.
Okay, I condensed it. It's not one word, but...
It's just bleh!
Okay, so my honourable mentions, I've very, very quickly picked off the list the ones that I think I need to mention. Firstly, in terms of kind of walking sims, I think What Remains of Edith Finch needs to be on there because it's
I've heard many
amazing.
Good things.
It's absolutely amazing. Kind of the the bar for walking sims. It's not jump scare. It tells an amazing story, but also lets you piece together kind of enough of your. It gives you enough room to put it together yourself.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into any detail because you really do have to experience it if you want to play it. So that was one. Again, another one was Detroit Become Human.
Yep.
Because I just thought it was such an amazing. I'm hard pushed to ever kind of put another game out there where I felt for characters the way that I did in Detroit. I really cared about the characters, and I really I wanted them to get through it. It wasn't a case of, there's other games like that, like Until Dawn and stuff, where you're kind of, let's see how so and so dies, but it wasn't like that with Detroit. I really cared about the characters. And then finally, very very quickly, Concrete Genie, quite a recent release. Kind of went under the radar for a lot of people. I followed it for a long time. You play as a bullied child in a rundown fishing town that has lost its charm. It used to be kind of a wonderful seaside place, but it turned into a bit of a hole. Kind of reminds me of where I grew up, I guess. And he has the ability to paint these kind of creatures called genies on the wall, and they come to life. So it's a very grey town, but you kind of use this stunning graffiti to kind of bring it back to life, and it's just such a beautiful experience. It's on sale at the moment, actually. It's quite cheap. I think it's only about 12 quid, maybe 15 quid, and it's not the longest of games, but it's just beautiful. It's just absolutely gorgeous, and I think everybody should go play it.
That's a really cool idea, actually, that game's got. That's really neat.
I've never played anything quite. It's just a lovely idea. So when you paint the genies on the wall, you want them to help you, but you need to keep them happy. So they might want you to paint a certain scene. So you kind of create this scene for them, which they then interact with. It's just lovely. It's just very very cute. I'm yet to do the VR side of it. There is like a kind of a VR add-on, but the main game itself is very very good.
Greg,
cool.
Any mentions?
I got a couple ones that I'm just going to breeze over. XCOM 2, I've already said I really liked. Spider-Man, we all already discussed that. I really love Spider-Man. It was the first game I've ever really enjoyed boss combat in. Pokemon XY, I think they're the best Pokemon games that have ever been made, by quite a long way, in my experience, which is a pretty wide experience. Stellaris, which neither of you will know about, but it's a strategy game on the PC.
Sensing a trend.
And and the last one is Civ 6, which is also a strategy game on the PC. Civilization 6.
Yeah, I expected Civ 6 to make your main list, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. I was very surprised that it didn't, being the kind of high regard you gave it last week.
Did I give it high regard last week?
Yeah, you spoke very highly of Civilization in general as a series.
Yeah.
Yeah, Civ 6 I really like, but it's got it. They've all got their flaws, right? But I put quite a few hundred hours into Civ 6. Civ 5, I'm up to something like 1,200 hours played. I think I might have played Civ 5 more than any other game in my entire life. So that came out before 2014 or whatever it was.
Fair.
There we are.
Anything else you boys want to say?
Your regular weekly reminder to buy Stadia.
That's just going to be a thing now, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it gets better every week, I assume. So the case just gets stronger, so we've got to keep making it.
Yeah. Okay, well, the podcast is now on iTunes as well.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
I know, right? I'm looking into getting it onto Spotify, so maybe that's an avenue we can go down at some point.
I love avenues, going down them and being near them, having a look at them. This is all my dream.
All right.
Is
Well,
it worth mentioning? Aren't we taking a break next week?
yes, we are. Yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah, that
Because
is the whole thing.
I vaguely remember Greg's having some nipples added.
Yeah. Is he having them removed? I thought he had too many.
No, not enough. He's trying to reach 9.
Oh, okay, right. My bad.
So, yeah. So we're having a week off.
Nipples aside, which is another good name for this podcast, actually. I would say next week we're really unlikely to record. Completely unlikely. And Christmas weeks, we don't know what's happening. And the weeks after that, we don't know what's happening because we've got to reorganise ourselves based on Dan's new schedule in his life. But I'm sure we'll make it work.
Yeah, we'll think of something.
We'll think of at least one thing. That'll be really good.
We'll make it work.
Well, we shall see you guys next time then.
Yes.
Thank you for listening, I guess. Well, definitely thank you for listening, but I guess I have to be polite.
Yeah, thanks, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
Yeah, bye.
Goodbye.
Yeah, bye.